Principle 12. The power of silence and position without explanation. At the lowest levels of the game, people fight to be seen. At the highest levels, they learn when to disappear. Most people believe power comes from speaking louder, explaining more, proving more. They fear being misunderstood. They fear being ignored. They fear silence, because silence forces them to face themselves. But at the highest level of money, influence, and control, silence is not weakness, it is a weapon. Those who truly hold position do not need to speak to be recognized. They do not explain, they do not argue, they do not react to everything. They understand a simple rule: the less energy wasted on display, the more energy remains to control the game. In a world where everyone talks, the silent man becomes dangerous. Most people live in reflex mode. They are pulled by opinions, news, praise, criticism, and emotional triggers. Every reaction is a loss of control. Every explanation places them in a weaker position. The wealthy understand that real power comes from choosing when to do nothing. Silence does not mean fragility. It is the mark of someone who has seen enough, understands enough, and no longer needs to prove anything. Those without position fear judgment. Those with position understand that judgment does not change long-term outcomes. When other people's emotions no longer move you, you begin to control your own rhythm. In business, in money, in power dynamics, the one who talks too much reveals too much. The one who stays silent protects information. Information is an asset. Whoever holds it longer holds leverage. The wealthy do not rush to respond. They let others speak. They observe. They measure. And when they speak, every word carries weight. Here is a truth most people resist. The more you explain, the more you signal that you seek approval. Powerful people do not ask permission to exist. They exist, and others adjust around them. The moment you feel compelled to clarify, justify, or defend yourself, you have handed control to someone else. This principle is not for the impatient. It demands tolerance for discomfort. Silence when misunderstood, silence when provoked, silence when doubted. But in that space, power accumulates. The weak react to soothe emotion. The strong let emotion pass and act only when it serves them. On Wall Street, the people who make the most money are not the loudest. They are the ones who control their breathing when the market collapses. When the crowd panics, they are silent. When the crowd celebrates, they are silent. They understand that collective emotion produces bad decisions. The one who remains calm inside the storm gains the advantage. Silence is also how mental energy is protected. Every meaningless argument is a withdrawal from your focus account. Every attempt to prove yourself to irrelevant people is an invisible loss. The wealthy do not spend money on things that do not compound. They do not spend energy on games that offer no leverage. Some people talk endlessly about their plans. Others build quietly. The first group needs validation to stay motivated. The second does not require encouragement. They are committed to themselves. When results appear, words become irrelevant. A man with real internal strength does not raise his voice to be heard. His presence creates space on its own. This cannot be learned from books. It comes from inner discipline, from knowing exactly where you stand in the game and no longer chasing attention. In power relationships, the one who reacts first usually loses. The one who stays calm longer usually wins. When you reveal no emotion, the other side cannot read you. When they cannot read you, they begin to lose control. And when they lose control, you are leading. Silence also acts as a filter. It removes the impatient, the shallow, the unfocused. Those who rush will leave. Those without depth will expose themselves. Only those with long-term intent will understand and respect intentional silence. New players need constant visibility to prove position. Established players understand scarcity creates value. When you are not always available, your presence becomes valuable. When you do not speak constantly, your words gain gravity. This principle applies deeply to personal life as well. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every emotion needs to be expressed. Self-mastery begins with controlling external expression. Control outside creates control inside. Silence is not avoidance, It is selection, selection of battles, selection of timing, selection of who deserves your energy. Once you begin selecting, life simplifies. And when life simplifies, power emerges. At the highest level, competition is not about voice, it is about position. Position cannot be purchased with words. It is built through time, discipline, and consistency in silence. The wealthy do not announce wealth. The powerful do not announce strength. There comes a moment when you realize silence offers more advantage than any sharp response. That is the moment you mature in the game of power. You stop being pulled into pointless conflict. You rise above it. Principle 12 does not teach you how to speak better. It teaches you when not to speak, and that is a skill few have the patience to master. But once mastered, you understand that real power always speaks through action, results, and presence without explanation.
The power of silence and position. When a man has gone far enough on the path of wealth and control, he eventually discovers an uncomfortable but undeniable truth. Excessive talking is a sign of weak position. The more a person feels the need to explain, justify, or prove himself, the lower he stands in the hierarchy of power. Silence is not weakness. Silence is what happens when you no longer need approval in order to act. Silence is what remains when you stop reacting to every noise around you. Silence is the natural state of someone who stands high enough to observe instead of getting dragged into chaos. Most people live in reflex mode. They speak because they fear being misunderstood. They react because they fear being left behind. They argue because they fear losing status. But the more they react, the more insecurity they reveal. And in the world of money, power, and influence, insecurity is detected instantly. Those who truly understand wealth know that power is not about controlling others with words. It is about controlling yourself first. When you master your emotions, you control the pace. When you control the pace, you control the game. Silence creates space, and space creates pressure. People are not afraid of words. They are afraid of what they cannot predict. A man who talks constantly is easy to read. A man who knows when to stay silent always holds strategic advantage. In business, those who talk the most are usually trying to sell something. Those who remain silent are often the ones making the final decision. They do not persuade, they let results speak. They let their position shape the conversation. This principle is not about being cold for no reason. It is about selectivity. Knowing when to speak, how much to say, and when to withhold information. Information is currency, and currency only has value when it is controlled. A man who cannot control his mouth will never control his destiny. The mouth is where emotions, plans, and weaknesses leak. Silence is a form of mental discipline. It requires real inner strength because the natural instinct is to be seen, to be validated, to be responded to. Those who go far learn to delay reaction. They do not answer immediately. They do not react instantly. They do not make decisions while emotional. That delay creates depth, and depth creates power. Position does not come from titles. It comes from whether you need to explain yourself. When you enter a room and people adjust their behavior without you saying a word, that is position. When decisions pause until you speak, that is power. Strategic silence also filters people. The impatient leave early. The psychologically weak expose themselves. Only those with composure stay long enough to understand what level you operate on. In the long run, silence conserves energy. Meaningless conversation drains internal power. Unnecessary conflict dissolves focus. The wealthy understand that mental energy is the most valuable asset they possess, and they protect it the same way they protect capital. This principle also teaches a hard truth. You do not need to be understood by everyone. Trying to be understood by all is a trap. The higher you rise, the more you will be misunderstood. And the strong do not care. They do not live on approval. They live on results. Silence does not mean disappearance. It is presence with weight. When you speak less, every word carries value. When your actions are consistent, explanation becomes unnecessary. trust forms naturally. At higher levels, silence becomes identity. You no longer need to prove that you are right. You only need to know that you are aligned. And when that happens, the world adjusts around you. Principle 12 is the convergence point of the entire journey. After mastering mindset, discipline, drive, decision-making, and endurance, you reach a stage where nothing needs to be proven. You operate from the inside out. The man who masters silence masters position. The man who masters position cannot be dragged into someone else's game. He sets the rules, he chooses the timing, and he leaves before the crowd realizes what just happened. That is real power. Not loud, not flashy, but deep, durable, and impossible to shake.
Subscribe and follow the channel for daily self-improvement and valuable knowledge.